which of course going to be, talking about the whole process, the interview process, what goes in the interview, what's the officer's mindset, and how the students should prepare themselves, right? So, all right. So we'll be talking about, like I said, visa process and interview preparation, which is also very important and significant part of the entire journey of a student. When he starts his admission process, selecting the universities, writing the SOPs, sending the financial papers, and then eventually boiling it down to the visa interview. Uh, so now what is happening is, because of the social media, there's so much of confusion. Sometimes it turns into a panic. Sometimes there's a lot of information which is not the correct information. And students tend to follow the trends and understand what's happening on the WhatsApp groups or the Telegram groups. We got to decode all of that so that you get the first-hand information on what's the real thing. So we'll be now, all the information is available online. Like if you go on to Google, if you go on ChatGPT, you'll find information. But we need to understand there has to be a difference between information and knowledge, right? So we'll try and figure that out and give you all that information. So now that students have already completed their process of getting their admissions, you get an I-20. Most of the time, we believe that the I-20 is actually coming from the university. However, it is actually coming from two very major and important departments of the US government, which is called the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, and the USCIS, which is the US Immigration and Citizen Services. So technically, it's the government which is issuing the I-20 in sync with the universities. On their website of the US government, a lot of students, those who have received their I-20s and struggling to even log in to probably schedule a visa appointment. So they have categorically told that there is a technical issue on the scheduling portal. So if you're facing those issues, so please do not panic. It is just a temporary thing which they're trying to fix up. And I'm sure by this weekend or coming Monday, it'll get fixed and they'll resolve this matter. So don't try, getting into something different or trying, saying that, hey, will I get an appointment or not? I'm not able to log in. It's just because the scheduling portal is currently facing some technical issues, which will get sorted out soon. So you will get your appointment. I'll tell you how the things work behind the curtain for everyone to be sure that they would be getting their appointments. So anyway, once you get your I-20, you need to start filling a visa form called DS-160. You need to log on to the US Embassy official website called US Travel Docs. And once you log into that, choose India, and then click on the non-immigrant visa when you see this screen. So anyone who's applying for a student visa or a visitor's visa or an exchange program, they all fall under the non-immigrant visa. So make sure that when you're filling your DS-160, so DS stands for Department of State. So now we have three departments: DHS, Department of Homeland Security, the USCIS, and the DS. All right. So when you're filling your visa form, make sure all the information on that form is absolutely correct. You can review it, you can log in, you can retrieve your form, and once you complete that form, it stays in the system for 99 years. Not that you fill today and tomorrow this form would be purged. No, it will not. It will stay in the system for 99 years. So that's the reason I say, make sure that all the information that goes onto this, which includes your social media, which includes your address, which includes the I-20 details, the service number, make sure that you verify those details before submitting it. Once you do that, you have to pay the visa application fees, which is $185. The service fees, it goes to the Department of Homeland Security, which is to be paid through fmjfe.com. It's $350, right? It has to be paid through a credit card only. Once you pay all those fees, then you're good to schedule an appointment. Once again, once you complete your DS-160, you have to again log on to the US Travel Docs, click on non-immigrant, and then there's a little button which says visa login. So you need to create your visa login. And once you see the scheduling, you have to schedule two appointments. One is going to be for your fingerprinting, and the other one is going to be for your counselor appointment. And both of those appointments have to be scheduled in one go. Not that I log in today, I see that there are OFC dates available. I check a date and a time, and then I log out and then log in again. So you have to do that at the same time. All right. Now, once you schedule your appointment, when you go in for your fingerprinting, you need to carry your passport, your visa appointment letter, your DS-160 confirmation page, your I-20, and your service fee receipt. These are the most important documents for you and the embassy to process your application. So make sure that you follow these series, right? Once when you schedule your appointment, be there at least 30 minutes before the interview so that you can figure out what's happening, not just on the nick of the time. All right. If your appointment is at 8 o'clock, then be there at least by 7:30. Half an hour before is always a good time to be there. So let's also understand the financial documents that you have to carry when you go in for a visa interview. Most of the time, students believe that, because they've got their I-20, they've sent in their documents. So those are the same documents that I need to carry when I go for my visa process. There are two different processes, two different visa laws. One is the federal law, one is the visa law. The federal law says that the school must make sure that the student has enough money to take care of their living expense and the tuition fees, right? It can be through a bank balance certificate or an education loan or a combination of these two. However, when you're going in for your visa interview, the officer wants to understand the financial strength of the family, how strong the family is here financially. They want to understand there's a regular income which is coming in. They have savings investments. We also own properties to show not only your social ties, but also your financial ties to your home country. So please make sure that, the documents that you send for your admission offer, you can carry those along with the tax returns, the bank statements, the fixed deposit shares, whatever proof of investments that you have. You must carry all of those. Now, when we talk about financial papers, who can be your sponsor? So let's say that, when you were sending your documents for your I-20, you took an education loan and you sent it, you got your I-20. That's fine. But like I said, the objective of the visa officer is to figure out the financial strength of the family, right? So financial strength of the family means who all are there: parents, siblings, grandparents. You can carry those financial papers as well, apart from the education loan or the bank balance certificate that you sent or the combination. But when you go in for a visa interview, the officer is looking at your financial ties to your home country. All right. So what are the documents? It depends on the family. If they're in a business, then carry business documents. If they are working, then salary documents, employment offer, income tax returns for the last 3 years, proof of investments, fixed deposit, shares, bonds, mutual funds, copies of property papers. Now, on the internet or on the social media, it says that you have to get a CA certificate done. Well, that's not mandatory. It's a personal choice. The office is not interested in looking on those CA certificates. But if you want, you can get the valuation and everything for your own comfort. The officers are more interested in looking at the document if they want to see, but they also want to know from you because that's an interview. Education documents, your school certificates, your college degree, and if you've appeared for any test like an IELTS, the TOEFL or the SAT or the GRE or the GMAT, if you have those scores, if they are online, take a screenshot and you can carry those documents when you go in for the visa interview. Employment offer. If somebody is going for the master's or the PhD and if they've been employed, so their employment offer or the joining letter, whatever it says, your salary slip for the last 3 months, and your relieving letter. The relieving letter is from your last or your past employment. Not that if you're currently working, you have to resign and get a relieving letter. Not required. If you're currently working, just your employment offer, your salary slips are good enough. But if you had multiple employments, then of course, your relieving letters from the past also is important. Now we jump into the interview. Now, any interview or any conversation is very subjective. What I say, what you understand could be very two different things. So if we understand the visa law and also try and fix our answers based on what are the requirements, it becomes easier for the visa officer to understand your profile. And then he also understands that how are you navigating and helping him make a decision in your favor. So always remember that conversation, what you say, right? And what the officer could understand could be two different things, right? So broadly, if I talk about the visa law for a student, the law says that anyone who's applying for a non-immigrant visa, including a student visa, the officer understands or looks at you as a potential immigrant. He believes that if you go to the US, you may not return back to your home country. In order to qualify for a visa, he's looking at your ties to your home country, your social ties, your financial ties, your professional goals. So the most important thing for a student is to understand your professional goals, right? Because that's the reason he's going there, to upgrade his skills so that he could improve on the skill set, and then achieve his career objectives. Every day, the visa officers are looking at two kinds of students. One, those who want to go to the US, and one, those who want to go and study in the US, right? So there's a difference, and the officer can ask two questions to figure out who's a genuine student, right? And who just wants to get into the US. It's very simple for the officer to make that assessment. Along the line, when we go towards the end, you'll also understand what is the difference here. All right. So like I said, interviews could be extremely stressful because you've been working for almost a year and a half, for months together. You've gotten your I-20, you've written your SOPs, you've applied to various colleges. Now that you've got your I-20, sometimes students become very complacent. They believe that now that I've got my I-20, I've got my admissions, so visa is going to be a cakewalk. So that's the most important aspect of the entire journey, because now the entire thing has shifted from your control to the visa officer's control. So you need to be very sure and very clear what are your career objectives and where does this education and the university fall in between. All right. So like I said, if you understand your intent of why, sometimes people get confused between why you want to go and study, and they start talking about the features of the US education system. That it's globally recognized, it's very practically designed. All that the visa officer understands, he knows that, right? But you need to understand your why. All right. Now, there are possible questions the officer might ask, right? Because you're applying as a student, right? So he may ask you, why do you want to go and study in the US? Why this particular college? How will this education help you? What will you study there? So you need to understand your course content, the curriculum, the subjects. And again, it should all be connected to your career goals. What are your future plans? That's where he wants to understand. Will you return back or not? All right. Also, let's understand, when a person goes in for a visa interview, on a given day, there are close to about 500 to 600 applicants applying for various different visa categories. Someone's applying for a tourist visa. Someone's applying for a business visa. Someone's applying for an exchange program. Somebody's applying to, join a ship. So there are various kind of categories. It's a queue that is at the embassy. The officers will call each person, and then he starts asking questions. So let's understand, in front of you, there were 5 applicants applying for various different visa categories, like a B1 or a tourist or going to visit a relative, and then you appear there. So let's assume that the visa officer doesn't know you, right? You have to provide relevant information voluntarily, right? Prepare according to your own self, not what you've heard from a friend of yours who appeared for an interview, not what you've heard on YouTube, not that what is the social media saying. You need to understand your story, which is really important. In that 2 minute, or somebody or your relative who cracked the interview, that's his story. You need to understand your own story, right? So let's understand, if the officer says, why do you want to go to the US? In this question, the officer wants to understand. So let's assume there was a business visa applicant in front of you, and now you're there. Why you want to go to the US? And you start talking about saying, sir, I want to go and study in America because the US education gives me the best global exposure. Now, he is not able to connect with what you've studied here, right? What are your future goals? He's not able to comprehend unless you tell him. And he's not going to sit down and ask you those 20 questions to give him one answer, right? So be a little more proactive in providing that information voluntarily, okay? Now, it is important to create a storyline, right? Which should have a clear objective of how this education would help you, what is the course content, what are your career objectives, and then articulate an answer that resonates with entire professional goals and your journey. We'll come to that. So understanding your professional goals is the essence of defining your career objective. So if you start working backwards, if somebody wants to be let's say, a graphic artist, right? He wants to work for a major company in India. So that's your career objective. Or if somebody wants to be let's say, a specialist in artificial intelligence and work for, let's say, Yahoo or a Google. So that's your career objective. And then talk about how will this program help you? What is the content? Why have you chosen this university? Then it becomes easier for the officer to understand, right? So focus on the relevant knowledge, right? So your professional goals would really help you understand that why have you chosen that area of expertise, right? If you want to be a business analyst, right? So you want to go and study data. You want to understand business intelligence, right? So choose the right program, knowing that, okay, this program would help me navigate in this complex world of corporate and achieve my career objective. It also depends on how you would develop your skills, right? So those are the key points that you have to talk about when you're going for your visa interview. All right. Now, in order to understand your professional goals, it is very important that your education career that you'll go and study would give you that trajectory, the entire objective of going and studying over there. For example, book my show or Blinkit or Swiggy, right? So I'm giving you an example. So when I was, a kid, if I had to go buy a ticket to watch a movie, I had to drive all the way, stand in the queue, and then ask the counter guy if he has those tickets or not, right? That seat, that particular show. Now, the solution is book my show. I can sit down at my home, choose the show that I want to go and see, which seats I want to choose and select. So it has made easier. So this is a storyline. So I had a student who wanted to go to the US to study computer science. And his narrative was, sir, whenever I go out with my family, I cannot find a parking spot. So I have developed an app which I can use to pre-book my parking spot. But I do not know how to create a business out of it. What are the technicalities that will go into it? How do I scale up? So that's the reason I want to go and study in the US. So he had a complete storyline to tell the officer. And then based on that, he would then choose the university, the program. So create a storyline for yourself, right? Now, why this particular college? You don't choose a college because of the location, right? For you, a location would essentially mean that I could find internships, or it is closer to the Silicon Valley. But the officer could understand that, hey, this person has chosen this because he's looking at internship and possibly he's trying to create a network to find a job there. So you don't choose a university because the weather is good. You don't choose a university because it is more affordable or it is giving you a scholarship. All that is good for you. But in order to frame an answer for a particular college, you've got to inform the officer what is the specialization that you're looking at. Based on that, have you done some shortlisting? The number of colleges you've applied to, the number of admits you've got, and finally the admits, and then out of those admits, why have you chosen this? So your choice of university has to be based on the specialization, the course content, the curriculum, the research areas that you're looking at, the ranking and the professors and the content of the program that matches the industry requirement. All that should go into your answer in terms of finding out why this particular college, right? Question, why will you go, what will you study in the US, right? So here the officer wants to understand what are the subjects? Have you chosen the subjects? Do you understand the subjects? Can you relate those subjects with your career objectives? The curriculum, the way it is structured, does it match your requirements or not, right? So it is very important to understand the content of your program, right? So why US? So this essentially means why not India, right? So you've got to talk about the quality of education in the US. A lot of people come and say, should I degrade India? No, nobody is saying to degrade India. Just talk about the difference. The difference is that in India, it is very theory-based, which is a fact, right? Unfortunately, the curriculum, there's a disconnect between how the industry has moved towards newer technology and the curriculum has not been updated, right? The practical approach, the global exposure that you get, you understand how the global mindset works, right? So talk about the curriculum which is upgraded to match the industry requirement. Talk about the faculty. talk about how the education is relevant to the industry norms. So talk about all those things. How will you fund yourself? Now, funding also becomes very important because here it shows your social ties, your financial ties, right? Even if a person is getting 100% scholarship, it is important to show your financial ties to your home country, right? So, we're going to talk about your family's annual income, right? The total savings, investments, the shares, the bonds, the property, and then say if you've taken an education loan, that sir, I've also taken an education loan which covers my tuition fees and living expense, or I've got a 100% scholarship, right? First, talk about the financial stability in India, and then talk about the availability, right? So, what are your future plans? Here, the officer wants to understand what are your future goals once you return back to your home country. So, talk about what's happening in India, how the industry is changing, how the US education would put you in a different bracket altogether, right? Not just saying, sir, I'll come back and work in India because my parents are here, you know, my parents are getting old, so my future plan is to come here. I've got my social ties as well to my home country. All right. So talk about the impact, how the artificial intelligence, machine learning is changing and optimizing the entire operations, research and innovations and opportunities in India, which would all this education would prepare you for a future, right? So talk about those things. How will that really impact your career? You can talk about how Google could hire you. Now, a lot of people say that, if I talk about Google or Amazon, they all are in the US. Wouldn't the officer believe that I want to work with Google US? Well, now look at the career opportunities for a person who has a master's and specialized in artificial intelligence and machine learning and coming back and working for Google India or Amazon. So career growth here would be much better. So talk about that. All right. OPT. A lot of people get confused between OPT and the H-1. If the officer is asking you, would you like to work in the US? So work essentially means that you've completed your studies, you've completed your optional practical training, and then you have to work, right? So if the officer is saying, would you like to do an OPT? So the answer to OPT should be yes. Yes, sir, I'd like to, take the opportunity of optional practical training because it allows international students to practice what they've learned in the classroom. And I would like to take that experience before coming back to India, right? So what if you're offered a job in the US? So your answer would be, well, sir, looking at the growth in India, if I talk about Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, or Amazon, so my career growth in India would be better, right? With my US education, my career growth here would be much better. So talk about your growth in India. All right. If I have to break down, now it is going to be your reason of going to the US should be connected to your reason of coming back. To start talking about what's happening in India, how your career growth would happen in India and how would you benefit of studying in the US, so that gets connected to your reasons of returning back to your home country. So in order to just recap, when you're going in for your fingerprinting, make sure that you have your passport, the old and new, your visa appointment letter that you've scheduled, the DS-160 confirmation page, your I-20, and your service fee receipt. A lot of people also ask me, do I need to sign my I-20? Well, yes, if you look at your I-20, the last line says signature of the applicant, so you can sign it. The date has to be mentioned of your visa interview date, not the VAC date, right? The parents have to sign the I-20 only if you're under the age of 18, right? So when you go in for your counselor appointment, which is going to be after your fingerprinting, so when you go in for your fingerprinting, they'll check mark, they'll put a stamp on your DS-160 and your appointment letter. Make sure that you carry the same along with all the financial papers, education, and work-related documents, right? How to be confident in the interview, because a lot of people believe that, interview is going to be extremely stressful. So this is a kind of a miscommunication that happens that, okay, I want to go and tell my story, but we need to understand what the officer is looking at. So that's where the disconnect happens, right? So there are some random questions that, I keep getting from other students is, what should I wear for my visa interview? Well, be comfortable, right? But be sharp, wear something which is comfortable, which is of course, it's an important in an interview at the embassy. So, wear good clothes, not overly dressed like a tie and a coat and a blazer, not required. Unless you're going for a management program, you've already put in 3 or 4 years of work ex, then yes, you can wear it. When should I reach the embassy? Half an hour before the interview. Carry my documents. Yes, you can carry your documents into the embassy. It can be a leather folder. It could be a clear folder. Whatever folder you can carry. But the most important thing when you're carrying those documents is you must know which document is where. So I always recommend that make simple sets, right? Financial papers, education documents, essential documents, just clear sets, right? And also a lot of people say that once my visa is approved, if I go to the US and if the officer asks me, will you come back during the summer breaks? You could always mention, sir, if my professor gives me a project to work on, I would love to do that project. If not, I'll come and visit my family here. How do I get to know my visa is approved? Once the interview is over, the visa officer will keep your passport with him and he'll say that, congratulations, you'll hear from us in the next 4 or 5 days. Currently, what is happening is anyone who's going for an interview, his visa is approved, they'll keep their passport, but still they'll give them a letter which is going to be saying it's a 221G refusal, and they'll ask you to make your social media public, right? When you go in and log in to see what is the decision, it may show as a refusal initially, but it is not refused. It means they've kept your passport, they'll do the verification, and after a couple of days, that refusal turns into approval, and then after a couple of days, it turns into issuance, right? So if you see the word, unless they return your passport, that means your visa is refused. If they keep your passport and you still see refusal, it is not a refusal, all right? How long does it take to get my passport back after the approval? About a week's time, right? How much fund do I show in the saving account? Should we maintain a certain amount? Well, like I said, the office is looking at the overall health of the financial situation of the family. Your savings, your investments, fixed deposits, mutual funds, property documents, you can carry all of that. In your account, if you have maintained, let's say, a 10, 20, 30 lakh rupees, that's fine. It's not that you have to maintain the entire 4-year or 1-year fees in your saving, all right? And then, of course, you can always show your education loan, which covers your entire tuition fees and living expense, all right? So thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.